What's up, everybody? If you want to join the greatest online Star Wars community, the Fandom Menace, make sure you hit that subscribe button before today's video starts, so you don't miss out on any updates and you're always the first to know when our newest videos go live.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker is the next and probably last Star Wars film to ever be released. Hopefully. It feels incredibly strange hoping that the once great Star Wars saga would be put to a permanent end, but as you know, Star Wars isn't really Star Wars anymore. In 2012, George Lucas made the biggest mistake of his life and sold Lucasfilm to Disney for the sum of $4 billion. Every year since then has become the worst year to be a Star Wars fan. From bad movies, merchandise, and the media attacking fans, not a word uttered in regards to Star Wars can be associated with fun, and it all falls on the shoulder of one person, Kathleen Kennedy. Join us today for part 2 in our Star Wars trilogy, Bullshit Edition, as we discuss Kathleen Kennedy's newest gap and explain why she is the worst thing to happen to Star Wars. Before we get started, click subscribe so you don't miss out on part 3 and hit that thumbs up button to let us know you're dissatisfied with Disney Star Wars as much as we are. When we last met, we discussed the newest issue of Vanity Fair magazine that featured Star Wars Episode 9 as the cover story. The issue published a behind-the-scenes article attempting to hype up Episode 9 in the same way the media did back in 2015 with The Force Awakens. While it seems like useless fluff from the outside, this article is filled to the brim with insight as to why Star Wars is as bad as it currently is. In part 1, we broke down why J.J. Abrams is a hack, good at only one thing, copying others' works, and how he equates Star Wars to real sets and practical effects. Today we're going to discuss the big boss of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and how her oblivious take on Star Wars has sunk Episode 9 before it even left the dock. To call Kathleen Kennedy an unqualified executive producer would be incredibly unfair. To call Kathleen Kennedy unqualified to lead Lucasfilm would be incredibly accurate. Kathleen Kennedy has done a lot of stupid things in her tenure as Lucasfilm president, from the Force's female fiasco to firing Lord and Miller to intentionally making Star Wars a female brand but killing its viability at retail. All bad things. One would assume that moving forward, Kathleen Kennedy would try and alter the trajectory of Star Wars after such a massive fan backlash. Well, you know what they say about assumptions. In the latest issue of Vanity Fair, Kathleen Kennedy has this to say about Star Wars. Now, I'm going to be using Bounding Into Comics as a source once again, and that link will be in the description below. Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy added her own thoughts about the expectations fans have for Star Wars and how the franchise is different from Marvel Studios. I think there is a larger expectation that Disney has. On the other hand, though, I think that Disney is very respectful to what this is, and right from the beginning, we talked about the fragility of this form of storytelling, because it's something that means so much to the fans that you can't turn this into some kind of factory approach. You can't even do what Marvel does, necessarily where you pick characters and build new franchises around those characters. This needs to evolve differently. She would then talk about how she believes the loss of innocence needs to permeate the storytelling of Star Wars. There's a loss of innocence, a sense of innocence that existed in the 70s, that I don't think to any extent exists today. I think that has to permeate the storytelling and the reaction of the stories and how they're set up. It has to feel different, because we're different. Finally, she discusses how evil needs to be portrayed in the films. Evil needs to feel and look very real, and what it means today may not be as black and white as it might have been in 1977, coming off a kind of World War II sensibility. So let's take a closer look at what Kathleen said. Again, this is a roadmap from how we got to the good old days of George Lucas to the ironic, factory-produced Star Wars that lacks a soul. I think there's a larger expectation that Disney has. Clearly, Disney had one thing in mind when purchasing Star Wars: money. They wanted to buy Star Wars and make money forever. It's a business move. No problem there. Their mistake was allowing this woman to convince them that Star Wars needed to become something it wasn't. On the other hand, though, I think that Disney is very respectful of what this is, and right from the beginning we talked about the fragility of this form of storytelling. What fragility? Remaking the original trilogy? Because it's something that means so much to fans that you can't turn this into some factory approach. If Lucasfilm respected the fact that Star Wars meant so much to the fans, why would they allow a schism in the fan base? Is it because a certain portion of the audience doesn't agree with Hollywood ideals and politics? Could it be so simple? Could they be so shallow? Yeah, it's Hollywood, and everything they do is fake. No surprise there. Think back to the fanboy tier mugs, or when they crossed out Luke's face to antagonize people. Remember when Rian Johnson was going to town on people on Twitter over fake stuff? Chuck Wendig being all Hercule a jerk? That forgettable woman who lectured us on why we're not customers of Lucasfilm? And the failure of Solo. What do all of those things have in common? They were all embarrassments for Lucasfilm in 2018. And who was in charge? Kathleen Kennedy. I hope 2019's different, but, it's not. You can't even do what Marvel does, necessarily where you pick characters and build new franchises around those characters. This needs to evolve differently. Yes, Kathleen, you can't do what Marvel does. You're 4 years into this all new, all different, all terrible iteration of Star Wars, and there's been talk, multiple times, of taking a break from Star Wars. I don't recall Kevin Feige saying the MCU needs multiple years off. I hear other stupid remarks and bad ideas in the making, but never time off from the MCU. Come to think of it, I never hear any Star Wars news from you. That comes from Bob Iger. Kinda strange, don't you think? Her quote is interesting, and by interesting I mean hypocritical, because Star Wars is desperately trying to do what Marvel does. Does the name Cassian Andor ring a bell? Word on the street is that he's getting his own Disney Plus show. Isn't that taking a character and building a franchise around them? Pushing aside the fact that Cassian Andor is a wet blanket character that no one wants to know more about, Kathleen Kennedy's remarks just show how out of touch she is. We don't do that, all while doing the thing we claim not to do. Is Kathleen Kennedy all there? Is Granny spry? That last part about evolution is true. They've evolved the characters so far from what they should be that they're unrecognizable. There's a reason people are upset about Luke Skywalker's treatment in The Last Jedi. It's not because he didn't fight the First Order all by himself, it's because Rian Johnson didn't understand Luke Skywalker and make everything he did out of character. Probably because The Last Jedi was created from a first draft. It needed more refinement. If only the head of a company demanded more out of who she appoints to make Star Wars. That's not the case, but I can dream, can't I? Kathleen's next quote is what really sets alarm bells off. After reading this, Kathleen Kennedy truly does not understand what Star Wars is or what it's meant to be. There's a loss of innocence, a sense of innocence that existed in the 70s that I don't think to any extent exists today. I think it has to permeate the storytelling and the reaction to the stories and how they're set up. It has to feel different because we're different. Evil needs to feel and look very real, and what that means today may not be as black and white as it might have been in 1977, coming off a kind of World War II sensibility. This is why Disney Star Wars is trash. Kathleen Kennedy has just shown how poorly she grasps what Star Wars is. Star Wars is escapist entertainment, not a reflection of how shitty the world is today. When Luke Skywalker looks off into the horizon, that's meant to evoke an emotional reaction in the viewer. We want to get out from our mundane situations and look for adventure. It's our destiny. Star Wars is archetypes, good versus evil. There is conflict in Darth Vader, but the backstory is the Rebel Alliance versus the Empire. There are no discussions of war profiteering, animal abuse, gender equality, etc. Those are the topics that we're bombarded with on the internet. When we sit down and watch a Star Wars film, we're supposed to be in a galaxy far, far away, not mired in whatever year we're in's politics. It doesn't have to feel different because we're different. It feels different because Kathleen Kennedy wants to appeal to an audience that's Hollywood approved. The changes made to Star Wars weren't organic, they were manufactured. It's funny. For as much as they copy-paste visuals, plot points, characters, and music from old Star Wars films, the one thing they chose to change was the spirit of Star Wars. The one thing it needed to survive. Lightsabers, TIE fighters, and another Death Star don't make up for the fact that they, Lucasfilm under Disney, have done everything wrong in regards to Star Wars, and the Vanity Fair article gives us insight as to why. Kathleen Kennedy wants to give off a certain air of sophistication in regards to her comments on modern evil, how it needs to look and feel real. Well, evil is neutered in this new Star Wars for the sake of a joke. Admiral Hux being thrown across the floor, anyone? It's just another Marvel trope. I expect Kathleen Kennedy and the crew at Lucasfilm pay closer attention to Marvel than we realize. Smart. I mean, it's not like the Marvel films are some of the highest grossing films ever, and every day we get closer and closer to the inevitability that Endgame becomes the biggest film in history. Is it? I wonder why that is. Well, it's quite simple, actually. It's because Marvel films are the modern-day myth. They're the classics retold with a new coat of paint. They're the stories that resonate with us on more levels than we realize, and we gravitate towards characters that we can identify with. Stan Lee knew this way back in the 60s when he co-created the most popular Marvel characters. This excerpt from JohnRomanello.com gives us interesting insight on superhero myth, and an incredible parallel to Star Wars. Why we all love them, understanding the universal appeal of superheroes. Going further with mythology, we can look at things in terms of storytelling and how myths of superheroes, like all heroes, appeal to us on a number of levels. Certainly, they excite and delight us because they are cool, but they appeal to us on a deep psychological level for reasons both obvious and subtle. The subtle reasons are a bit beyond the scope of this post, as they primarily have to do with mythic structure and the hero's journey as defined by Joseph Campbell. To give you a brief description, Campbell was a mythologist who looked at myth across cultures and focused not on how they diverged, but how they converged. That is, looking at what the myths from various cultures had in common. The name Joseph Campbell is the most important name in Star Wars that you don't know about. He is responsible for the relatability that makes Star Wars such an important part of who we are. This chart from moongadget.com gives us a point-by-point breakdown of George Lucas following Campbell's hero's journey. It's eye-opening how literal George took all of it, but the end results and success can't be denied. There's a bonus chart attached for those Matrix fans. I won't be reading that, but you can go back and rewatch the video to catch the Matrix parallels. Here's Campbell, and here's Star Wars, Part 1 Departure. The Call to Adventure, Princess Leia's Message, Refusal of the Call, Must Help with the Harvest, Supernatural Aid, Obi-Wan rescues Luke from the Sand People, Crossing the Threshold, Escaping Tatooine, The Belly of the Whale, The Trash Compactor, Part 2, Initiation, The Road of Trials, Lightsaber Practice, The Meeting with the Goddess, Princess Leia, Wears White in earlier scripts was a sister of a mythic order, Temptation from the True Path, Luke is tempted by the dark side, Atonement with the Father, Darth and Luke reconcile, Apotheosis, becoming godlike, Luke becomes a Jedi, The Ultimate Boon, the Death Star is destroyed, Part 3, Return, Refusal of the Return, Luke, come on, Luke wants to stay and avenge Obi-Wan, The Magic Flight, Millennium Falcon, Rescue from Without, Han saves Luke from Darth Vader, Crossing the Threshold, Millennium Falcon destroys pursuing TIE fighters, Master of Two Worlds, Victory Ceremony, Freedom to Live, Rebellion is victorious over the Empire. And here's a bonus with some common mythical elements. Two Worlds, Mundane and Special, Planet Side versus the Death Star. The Mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Oracle, Yoda. The Prophecy, Luke will overthrow the Emperor. Failed Hero, Biggs. Wearing Enemy Skin, Luke and Han in the Stormtrooper outfits. Shapeshifter, the hero isn't sure if he can trust this character. That's Han Solo. Animal Familiar, R2-D2 and Chewbacca. Chasing a lone animal into the Enchanted Wood, the animal usually gets away. Luke follows R2-D2 into the Junlan Wastelands. The Millennium Falcon follows a lone TIE fighter into the range of the Death Star. It's incredible to see Star Wars broken down like that. What Kathleen Kennedy and her cohorts fail to tap into is the magic of the Star Wars storytelling. They're focused on creating something that's so modern that the setting of a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away is meaningless. They did not create any memorable characters, nor did they create any emotional attachment. What they did was make cold, calculated decisions that played on nostalgia, yet forgot to factor in the intangibles that are responsible for the longevity of Star Wars. If Star Wars was solely the product of post-World War II America, it would have came and went like so many other forgotten properties. But Star Wars was different. It tapped into our psyche in a way that's never been done before. George Lucas's Star Wars wasn't created in a boardroom with charts and demographics in mind. It was created with mythology. It took who we are, who we wanted to be, and the end result was the great epic of humanity. Star Wars can't be recreated because Hollywood won't allow it. They won't get over themselves enough to create something that resonates with everyone, that doesn't push people out because of the jilted ideology of the creators. In 1977, when disaster films and morally corrupt cops were the norm in cinema, along came Star Wars, and with its bright optimism, changed the world of cinema for a generation. Under the reign of Kathleen Kennedy, Star Wars is just a husk of what it once was. It is simply a brand name, and a vehicle for the things Star Wars was created to destroy. So after seeing just how out of touch Kathleen Kennedy is, are you even more excited for Episode 9? Let me know down in the comments below. For me, Disney Star Wars has felt very hollow, and Kathleen Kennedy's statements are basically an example of exactly why it feels so hollow. Like I said in the video proper, you can have lightsabers, TIE fighters, and everything else, but you just didn't get the feel of Star Wars right. And that's where the problem comes from. Sorry to leave you on such a down note, but this is the middle act of our trilogy, and like The Empire Strikes Back, which many would argue is the best, well, you gotta just come back next time to see how victorious the fandom menace truly can be. And for that to happen, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up so people know you liked the video, and get active in the comments below. The last video was a huge, huge success. Over 250,000 views in just a few days, so thank you to everyone who made that happen. Fandom Menace isn't just me and a couple other channels, it's all of us out there who are dissatisfied with the way entertainment is being portrayed. And you know what? This is us using our voices to speak out against the garbage that they try to sell us. If you want our money, give us a superior product. Just don't tell us to shut up and like it. That's not how anything works. You don't get that kind of treatment at a restaurant, you shouldn't get that kind of treatment from a movie studio. They don't own us. They just own the properties. But those properties don't exist if we don't buy the tickets. If you really enjoyed this video, join our Patreon page. $1 a month helps with $5, which is only 17 cents a day, gives you access to all kinds of exclusive digital content, and we're going to be pumping out more as the year goes on. You get a bonus podcast every week, commentaries, exclusive behind-the-scenes looks at world-class bullshitters. It's a lot of fun. But if you can't do that, get involved with our social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're all over social media. If you want to get involved with the Fandom Menace and hang out and make some friends, and that's what we're best with, making friends, building a community, well, then go over there and check it out. We talk about Star Wars, we talk about all sorts of entertainment, and most importantly, it's a lot of fun. So folks, come back next time for the finale of the Star Wars Trilogy Bullshit Edition. where we discuss Episode 9 and some of the controversy already building up around this film. You want to know what it is? Well, you'll just have to wait. But until then, folks, go out into the world, have some fun, and as always, be excellent to each other.